Welcome to Mission Oriented, a VeteranCrowd podcast that showcases veteran talent from both the private and public sectors. Their impact is everywhere. We are here to uncover it. Here's your host, Bob Louthan.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Bob Louthan, another episode of the Mission Oriented podcast. Pleased to have a colleague and friend of mine, Derren Burrell from Knoxville, Tennessee. He's a Citadel grad, class of 1994. We'll get into the VMI Citadel rivalry potentially here in our podcast, but and also the founder and leading Veteran Ventures Capital, a growing fund that's focused on investments in the veteran community. Derren, welcome to the program. Thank you for being with us today.
Bob, I appreciate it. Thank you for what you do, not only for this podcast, but for our veterans in general. You've been a stalwart for years and a real testimony to the power of the veteran ecosystem. So I'm excited to be here and glad to be a part of it.
It's a lot of fun, and Derren and I were together at the MilVets Startup Conference in San Francisco. What did you think about that conference? I've had a great time.
It was phenomenal. It was truly, there's a couple of them you have to go to every year, and that's number one on the list. Tim, Shay, and the group at Context, they just really outdid themselves, and I'm excited to really see them build upon that each year.
It was just outstanding. I'd say 400 or 500 people in attendance, and just the right mix. 70 funds maybe in attendance, lots of startups, many veterans, folks from nonprofits. Our friends at Bunker Labs, for example, were there. So just an outstanding program. I was really pleased to be there. Hey, let's talk a little bit about you growing up. We'll lay the historical foundation. How did you end up choosing to go to the Military College of South Carolina at the Citadel in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina? And then we'll talk a little bit about your experiences in the Air Force before we talk about what you're doing now.
Sure. So I was born in Charleston, but I was raised in the top of the state in Greenville, South Carolina. And so while South Carolina born and bred, my father went to the Citadel. So he was class of 64. And he pre-enrolled me at the Citadel when I was 7 days old. And so
the provisional appointment.
Correct. I had a provisional appointment. So I kind of knew from the beginning, we didn't go to a whole lot of football games. When we did, they were the Citadel football games. And, so growing up was kind of indoctrinated into me. I mean, he joked around and said, "Hey, you can go anywhere you want, but I'll pay for the Citadel." And so, that kind of conditioned me. And then, when I was, senior year in high school, I was running track and cross country, and they were one of the few colleges that offered me a bit of a scholarship to go and run for them. So I did.
Well, what was your event?
I was in any distance event. So, the 5K in cross country, which was 8K in college, and, mile, 2 mile, 3 mile, even the 6 mile races. And so we got an opportunity to do that in college. Really enjoyed it. And so, that's why I went to the Citadel. And then it wasn't until my junior year in college that I decided to gain a commission and go into the Air Force post-military. I didn't ever plan to do that. Just circumstances kind of orchestrated all of that. And that's the reason behind the Citadel. And we just didn't learn too much about VMI until my freshman year at the Citadel and realized I'd made the right choice. How about you?
Okay. All right. So, you grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. I mean, that's kind of like also enemy territory. I mean, there's no love lost between the Citadel and Furman either, right?
Oh yeah. Growing up, that was the rivalry, was Furman and Citadel. So, and actually, to tell you, my older sister went to Furman, so we had a pretty.
God, how did your father feel writing those checks?
He absolutely did not enjoy the color purple for a number of years. And so,
hey, Dad, I got you a sweatshirt at the bookstore. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, he'd light that sucker up.
I don't even want to touch that one. Okay, so by the way, what did you study at the Citadel?
I was a business major, business administration.
Okay.
So
And you get,
emphasis in finance.
all right. And so you get out and you go into the Air Force.
I did. I got my commission upon graduation. Got my number one choice in the career field, which was financial management. I did not get my number one choice in location. So I wanted to go to Eglin, Florida, and they gave me Minot, North Dakota. So about as opposite as you can get.
Ooh. What's the
Yeah,
temperature
so
differential between those two locations?
100
70
degrees. So yeah.
degrees.
Oh
Oh
man,
God.
there was a day that it got 100 below with the wind chill factor in Minot. So it was more than 70. Let's put it that way.
How long were you there before you actually got to thaw out?
3 years. So I was first duty assignment was 3 years, and then they rewarded me by sending me overseas to England for another 3 years. So
Yeah,
I couldn't complain too much. In fact, I met my wife there. She was a military brat, and so I took her from there, and then we went on a 21-year journey after that together in the military, and
that's
still together
fantastic.
today.
Yeah, I wonder
Yeah,
if there was a VMI grad that gave you your initial assignment as a second lieutenant. Yeah,
you would
maybe.
think
Yeah,
that ticks somebody off.
uh, that's funny. Okay, so well, that's cool. I love talking to people that have been veterans when you had done 20 years right in the Air Force and retire, what was the thought process on the transition? Because yeah, and candidly, you landed in I guess a space is kind of related to your expertise, but what was the thought process coming out of the Air Force?
Well, yeah, I would say that I certainly count the cost. So I was my last duty station was in the White House and the White House Communications Agency. So I was managing the president's communications budget and done. And so at the time, and I'd made O6 to continue on, but we had moved quite a few times. So nearly 10 times in the 20 years, and so a lot of quick moves. We had a large, I have 5 kids, and so we were moving, uprooting the family quite a bit. And a job opening came open here in Knoxville, Tennessee. That was a really good opportunity. Chief operating officer of a financial company. So I was going to be able to stay in the financial services realm. And so we did a lot of soul searching, a lot of praying, and decided to go ahead and retire a bit earlier than I anticipated. But again, basically, I actually, kind of calculated the difference between '05 retirement and '06 retirement, found the delta there, and talked to the employer and said, I planned on staying in the military. The delta is here. Can you meet it in terms of the compensation? And they said yes. And so we decided to start the second career. And so
Hmm.
we came to Knoxville after that and never looked back. Not to say I don't miss the military. I certainly do. The camaraderie and the brotherhood is something that you cannot describe unless you've been there, as I know you know, Bob. But we're cultivating that same ecosystem and like-mindedness now in the veteran financial ecosystem and even entrepreneurial area too. So I feel like it's really coming about and bringing that same ethos into this entrepreneurial area that we kind of live in, you and I.
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about the genesis of Veteran Ventures Capital.
Yeah, well, it came from personal experience. Um, I like I said, when I came out of the military and into this small fiduciary firm here in Knoxville, it was growing like crazy. And then I was able to really catalyze that through military principles. So think about like structure, organization, process management, administration, and these are things that discipline and rigor that you get in the military that are somewhat absent in small businesses. And so when I put those processes in place, the result was this company took off and doubled their size to over 100 employees, tripled their assets under management to from 450 million to right under 2 billion. And as part of that, and as they were growing so fast, they said, "Hey, you're a money guy, Derren. Go find us $2 million." And so I went on a quest to raise 2 million for this company to help it grow and scale. And that's where I found out that veteran-owned businesses had a disadvantage when it came to access to capital, because I was able to do it, but it took longer than I expected. And then I said, gosh, if I've been doing this for a couple of decades, I know that other veterans that come out and engage in business are facing the same type of problems. So I said, I think we can change this. Went to a group of folks, mostly veterans, and said, I think we ought to start a fund that invests in veteran-owned businesses. So that was the idea some 4 years ago. And then over a period of a year of getting mentored by venture capitalists, angel investors, and understanding the market and the size of what I had just done in raising 2 million for our company, then we launched Veteran Ventures. And then, I went full time on it in January of 2020, right before COVID hit. That's when we launched our fundraise. So a lot of learning, and then the dynamic of the environment, and then the world, at that time. So it took a lot longer to raise our first fund. We did do it, but it was basically taking what I had done in one area, plus the military and the skill set and the things that had really built up over the previous 20 years. And that's really how Veteran Ventures Capital came to be. We've evolved our thesis to focus not only on veterans, but veterans in the national security and defense industry, because that's where I played for 20 years, so we know how the contracting and procurement process works. So that's a great value add. We know how to get non-dilutive capital, so we've demonstrated that in our current portfolio. And so this is really the genesis of it was, my personal experience, but then seeing that it was a wide problem. I didn't know about Bunker Labs at the time. I later joined their team and helped found that Bunker Labs chapter here in Knoxville, ran it for about 5 years. And so all of these things started to coalesce and led to really our first fund, and the amount of deployment that we've done thus far has been a great success, and it looks like it's playing out just as we had hoped it would on our investment thesis.
You're listening to the mission-oriented podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network. My guest is Derren Burrell of Veteran Ventures Capital in Knoxville, Tennessee. Interesting, foundational stuff there about how it kind of happened. I don't think we all sort of set out to do these things. It almost happens by, the opportunity kind of walks up and kicks you in the shin sometimes. But, isn't it fun being a part of the veteran community? I don't know what it's like in Knoxville, Tennessee, but to have a Bunker Labs, gain some traction, make Knoxville one of the, the cities with the cohorts. It must be a lot of activity in the veteran community around Knoxville. Talk about that local community, and then we're going to, talk about a little bit more nationally about, what's going on in veterans and entrepreneurship. But how is it in Knoxville?
Well, it took a while to take hold. So the veteran, there's a sense of we don't like to, really toot your own horn.
Yeah.
You're part of a team. You're used to doing things as a cohesive group.
I found veterans are everywhere, but they're hard to find. I mean,
if you look at
they're not wearing it on their sleeve.
Right. Population wise, Tennessee's in the top 15 of veteran populations in the nation. And it probably took me a good year or so to really get our networking events to have more than 30 or 40 people. But it's now growing, it's flourishing. There's been a big push to have entrepreneurship kind of grow in Knoxville in general. And then early on, when I saw them building these ecosystems up, I said, well, can I be the voice of the veteran? And so Bunker Labs and Veteran Ventures are part of a couple of different, founding chapters for, this, innovation and entrepreneurship kind of push. So it's definitely moved, because right when you think of Tennessee, you think of Nashville and you think of Memphis, and obviously they're the two biggest, and they have incredible opportunities for businesses there. And then you have this kind of like, what's third place? I mean, is it Chattanooga? Or is it Knoxville? And so I would say that there's a constant struggle to see who is doing the most, but there's a lot of activity in trying to build up those two areas outside of Nashville and outside of Memphis, which are still great opportunities too. But yeah, to answer your question, the VIR, the Veterans in Residence program that we have here in the Bunker Labs Knoxville chapter, we don't have a WeWork here. We're not big enough. And so it's actually run out of the Knoxville Entrepreneurial Center. So it's a great relationship that we have with the KEC and with the chamber, with the, all the different groups that are somewhat quasi-governmental and governmental run to help bring the veteran voice into this startup realm. So it's growing. It's great, and I'm proud to be a part of it and see it continue to grow.
So let's now talk about more broadly the veteran entrepreneurial landscape as you see it, how that is. And, I think it would seem counterintuitive, but I think it's actually interesting that there are more funds now focusing on this market, which, in my experience, the collegial approach, partner with other funds to bring these businesses along. What are you seeing?
Yeah, you're right. It is so I've had the idea out there for 4 years um and just when I first started this, I definitely talked to some of the people that had been here for a while, right? Doug Doan from Hivers and Strivers is one of the first people I was introduced to, and he's been close to the oldest and blazing a path for the rest of us. But there was about, maybe 4 or 5 that I'd even heard of at that time. And so when we started our raise, we finished up at about 20 million. And so that's a pretty decent size, but or at least for a first fund, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a few of them that over the last couple of years have really started to really, like you said, proliferate. And I think it's an interesting issue that has come up, because what we see now is what other people noticed from the beginning is that veterans make a huge difference, not only on the battlefield but in the boardroom. Right? They have these same skill sets that entrepreneurials and leadership in early companies they're looking for. That decision making in a time constrained environment, that adaptability, that incredible focus that you need in the early stages, and then the ability to just corral people and get behind a mission. All of those things describe a veteran, and people are starting to see that, and we're seeing this resurgence of veterans into the business area and starting their own businesses, because it used to be a thing. When World War II, people came back from that, they were starting businesses almost 50%, one out of every two.
Yep.
I don't have to tell you, that's where we got the, Federal Express and Walmart and U-Haul and Enterprise and Remax and even Domino's and Chick-fil-A. All those were started by veterans. And so there was this huge historical precedence. Where's it gone? And in the late 80s, nearly 70% of all the Fortune are publicly traded companies had a veteran at the helm. So there was this, again, today, what we have is, what do we have? We have more technology. We have greater education that comes out of the military. I mean, they pay for incredible. Two of the guys on my team have PhDs. I have 3 master's degrees, all at the government's expense. And you're dealing with high technology. So what's the difference? And the difference is access to capital. They don't have the same, because the competition for getting money is more fierce than it's ever been. Even though there's a lot of it out there, it's still high tech is it can be expensive to get into. So the difference is that access piece, and that's really why Veteran Ventures was formed, to bridge the gap there. Because what you're seeing is that while veterans are underrepresented in venture capital, they're 30% less likely to receive venture capital. They outperform their non-veteran counterparts. So there's this arbitrage there, that if you can get in at a reasonable valuation, scale them up quickly, they will make you money quicker. it's a great investment thesis because it's going to make you money. You just have to be able to have them have the same level playing field that the non-veteran who's built up that Wall Street Rolodex for 20 years while we were out serving. We just got to bring that into equilibrium. And that's really what Veteran Ventures and Bunker Labs and the things that you do at VeteranCrowd, it's all interwoven together, right?
Right. The other thing that our friend Todd Connor preaches a little bit, and Blake Hogan, networks, right? So, did you find when you got out of the Air Force that you had to re-engineer your professional network before you kind of launched this thing? Was that the case for
Absolutely.
you? Was that your experience?
Yeah, it took about 4 years to build that up to an area where I felt like then I was ready to go and do something on my own. So yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with them, especially for those environments that don't have a major operating base near them. Knoxville's not, while it's very veteran friendly, there's no base around here that's active duty anyway. There's a guard base.
Hmm.
So the the non-military areas that we choose to reside in post our military service, those are a big challenge because you're used to this, whether that's living on base and having this immediate best friend that's right next to you, even right when you move in. Wow, when you move into a civilian area like where we were at, they didn't have that same understanding, and they had these long-standing, relationships from when they were, knee high, and so it's hard to break into that, and it's a different mentality. And yeah, it takes a while to rebuild that network, and it takes a lot of constant getting out there and making sure that you are attending almost every event possible, just so you can start handing out business cards and building out those networks. It takes a while.
Okay. Closing question. Um, how does an entrepreneur get in touch with Veteran Ventures Capital, and what's the right way to approach you as a firm if you're an entrepreneur thinking about raising capital or actually raising capital?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, easy on traditional way for us to get involved with us is probably through our website, veteranventures.us. That's where our application for funding is. Follow us on LinkedIn. That's our main mode of social media. We're on all the social media, but LinkedIn's definitely our targeted demographic. Um, and so when we get a lot of deal flow, we see about 500 deals come across our desk every year. So the deals are there. Um, Now the deals that we are looking for, they're not quite as plentiful because again, we have a targeted group of in this security and defense. And we also are not pre-revenue. We want to see some traction and sales, typically, close to $1 million. We can kind of work with that a little bit. And the majority of the applications that we receive probably don't fit those two areas. But the ones that do, then we have a little bit of homework to do on them. But when folks come to uh, uh, to any venture capitalist, you got to be able to show the scalability and the traction, relatively quickly. So I think that what tends to happen, especially in early stage, is you get really married to your product and you're so passionate about your product that you don't think too much about the business sense of it. And so I think that you need to make sure that you have that passion, but passion without profitability equals a hobby, right? And so what we
Right.
want to see is passion and profitability. And I think that that's important because again, if you haven't been exposed to these accelerators like Bunker Labs, the Veterans in Residence program that they have, and you don't have the experience of giving these funding pitches or getting advice for someone like you who's been there and done that, we typically see people talk too much about their baby, right? And the inner workings of it and the nanotechnology behind it, and they get into so much detail, and I'm just kind of like, this is just an intro call here, buddy. Just tell me tell me what it is, and then tell me how it's going to give me a 10x return for my investors over the next 3 to 5 years, and then we can go to the next level, and I can learn about all the other stuff. And so I think that that's kind of it, is bring me in with your story, and then bring me home by talking about the business opportunity on top of it. So I think that's kind of it. I hope that answered the question, but that's the initial thoughts on what we look for.
Yeah, I think two takeaways from your answer right there. One is know what the funding source is looking for, right? The quickest way to get a no is by not, is by asking the fund to do something that is absolutely outside the scope of what they want to do. You're just kind of wasting your time. The second lesson in your answer is, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but sell the problem, not the solution. In the, what is the problem you're solving, right? I think that Derren would probably want to hear, what's the big problem that you're solving before you start telling about all the whiz bang features and bells and whistles on this product, because what's the underlying demand going to be for it? Well, Derren Burrell, Veteran Ventures Capital, Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank you for being on the program. Time goes by quickly when we're doing these things. I really appreciate this. You being on the program. The Silver Shako resides in Charleston right now, but I hope uneasy rests the crown. So, I'm sure Derren and I will probably have $1 bet on the Citadel VMI football game from now until the end of eternity. How about that?
You got it.
Okay.
Well, if you want to give me money every year, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah. For the last 10 or 15 years, I'm probably going to be down a little bit, but I'm hoping that we're going to turn this franchise around. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening into the Mission Oriented podcast on the VeteranCrowd Network. We'll put links to all of Derren's contact information and how to get in touch with Veteran Ventures Capital on the landing page on our website. Derren, thank you again. I'll throw out an Army Bravo Zulu to you and the Air Force for your performance today. And that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Mission Oriented. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. To learn more about Mission Oriented and the VeteranCrowd Network, visit us at www.veterancrowdnetwork.com.